Welcome to the Behind the Bits podcast. Your host, Scott Curtis, wants to learn everything he can about stand-up comedy and take you along for the ride. Scott and his guests talk serious about comedy in every episode. Behind the Bits will uncover knowledge from different perspectives on subjects such as writing and performing stand-up comedy, as well as booking shows and the comedy life. If you're thinking about becoming a stand-up comic, already in the comic game, or a comedy nerd, Behind the Bits is the show for you. Now, let's get Behind the Bits.
Hey, BTB buddies. When I was listening to podcasts to research Behind the Bits, one of the good ones I found was the Art of Bombing podcast. Dan Bublitz is coming up on 4 years of hosting the Art of Bombing, which takes a unique perspective on learning about stand-up comedy. Bombing. Of course it's bombing. That's why they call it the Art of Bombing. Instead of Dan talking with his guests about their best moments in stand-up, he talks about their worst. Because we learn a lot more from our bombs than our killer sets. On Art of Bombing, you'll hear some gut-wrenching bombs and find out how each comedian recovered and got better after realizing why they had such a bad show. If you haven't bombed, you will, and the Art of Bombing will prepare you to turn it around to be a positive. You can find the Art of Bombing on all the apps and at artofbombingpod.com. You know what I'm going to say here. It's a good one. Hey, BTB buddies, we're sponsored by Podcorn. If you ever listen to a big-name podcast, they have a lot of sponsors. The reason why brands choose to advertise on podcasts is that podcast advertising is up to 3 times more effective than TV, print, or radio advertising. If you're a brand and you checked out advertising on those big-name podcasts, you found out that the cost may be way outside your budget. And if you're a podcast that would like to get some of that ad revenue, you found out that unless you have at least 10,000 listens per episode, advertisers won't even talk to you. Podcorn came about as a solution for advertisers with any budget from $100 to $1 million and podcasters with listeners in the hundreds or in the millions. Here's how it works. If you're an advertiser, go to podcorn.com and sign up as an advertiser. You enter in pertinent information about your brand and the message you want podcasts to communicate for you. You can then choose what type of advertising you'd like. You can get a host-read ad, an interview, a topical discussion, or all of the above. Then you can make your sponsorship live and wait for podcasters to give you their pitch. You decide who you want to work with. If you have a podcast, go to podcorn.com and register as a podcast. You'll create a profile with info about your podcast and the people who listen. Then you can start browsing sponsorship opportunities right away. As an advertiser or podcast, you communicate directly about the ad. There is no middle person. This is so easy you wouldn't believe it until you go to Podcorn and sign up. Guess where I got this sponsorship? Podcorn. I'm being paid to read this ad right now, and I'm just a little independent podcast. Check out the show notes for a direct link to Podcorn and sign up today. I know I'm glad I did. My guest is an Australian comedian, host, voiceover artist, keynote speaker, marketing guru, and we're going to find out what else. Tonight, I've got Ben Sorensen with me. Ben, how you doing?
G'day. You know what? You are accurate with both of them because it is tonight for you, today for me. I'm like 2 jugs of coffee in.
All right. And I'm drinking whiskey and root beer. So, that's what we're doing.
Root beer is something that really hasn't, well, root beer as you have it over in the States hasn't really taken off in Australia as such. We have a lot of fake sarsaparilla.
Yeah.
But that's very different.
Yeah, what's funny, I haven't drank root beer for years and years, and I had one we went through the drive-thru of a fast food restaurant, and I got one, and I forgot how much I liked it, so now I'm getting this Diet A&W, which is it's a pedestrian root beer. It's not the best thing in the world, but I got to say, it's really good as a mixer, too, because it doesn't matter how cheap the whiskey is, it still tastes good in root beer, so I'll take it.
So overall, that's a great cost saving. I love it. I love it. Follow us for more tips.
I'm glad we could help people out with the old root beer and whiskey stuff. And hit the subscribe button. First of all, Ben, where are you from?
I'm from Melbourne, which is the self-proclaimed coffee capital of Australia. Every morning, so it's funny. So when I used to live in a place down the road called Brunswick East, and every morning I used to get up and I could actually use my nose to smell where I'd get coffee for the day, because I have 9 award-winning roasters around me. So you just walk around and go, oh, that smells all right. I have a bit of that. So it was literally crazy and like the pinnacle of privilege to be to have so much around us, and to the point where in Melbourne, so in the US and a lot of other countries, Starbucks is a sign of affluence, whereas here in Australia it's a sign of effluence. It's no self-respecting Melburnian goes to Starbucks unless you like their sugary drinks.
Yeah, and that's about what they do. I'm not a coffee guy, so we can't talk a whole lot about coffee. I just don't drink it. I buy it when my kids are in town.
We can be friends now, so that's fine.
Yeah, I like the smell of it because when my kids are home, we brew it. We've got, a coffee maker and all that kind of stuff, and we brew it, and I love the smell of it. I just can't drink it. I drink root beer instead, so,
Espresso martinis, I find that's a gateway drug sometimes.
Ooh.
You get to have fancy little glass as well.
That might be something to check out. Let's talk about stand-up first. So you do so many things, but when was your first time doing stand-up? How old were you? What was the scenery? What happened?
You know what? I think there's two different... I'm a little bit different in that sense. Now, I love stand-up, and I still write segments and routines. Mm-hmm. And most of them are actually used when I compare an MC.
Okay.
So I have a bank of all of these that I just draw on. A lot of really witty comedians, wittier than I, so that you can just pull it out of the bank. Like Joan Rivers used to talk about having all these filing cabinets of great routines and great jokes, and the situation would turn up and you'd go, oh, yeah, okay, I got one for that. So that's how I work. So I started very young. I was doing comedy shows when I was like 14, 15. Oh, wow. So I started doing like vaudeville. So I was doing dinner theaters and stuff like that with variety shows. So I'd get up and do a piece there, and we'd also have skits that we'd do and we'd write. So that was a really great start. And it's really funny because I don't talk about that particularly much. Mm-hmm. And then I moved into wanting to be a musician, which went terribly, very terribly. Not just the pay, it was just shocking. I ended up singing with the Queensland Youth Choir, obviously in Queensland, and I used to open a few of their shows, and again, great experience in front of an audience. And then I jumped across to doing some kids TV stuff, which meant I knew every fart joke in the book. And then it's really been driven by the live events and the opportunities that come through that. For example, panel shows and all sorts of bits and pieces in that realm. This year is the first year, though, that I'm actually doing running a Melbourne International Comedy Festival venue. We tried last year, but COVID killed it. So there'll be some more opportunities to do stand-up there. And I think the Comedy Festival in Melbourne is the second largest in the world next to Edinburgh. So I'm really fortunate that's in my own backyard.
Yeah. So this isn't on the list of my rapid round questions, but starting as early as you did, have you ever had a fear of performing in public and you just got over it, or have you just been brazen and go up and do it?
I'd call it blissfully ignorant.
Okay.
Yeah. And part of that is I've recently discovered is due to my autism. Basically, when I go on stage, I want to make sure it's funny and entertaining for me. And if everyone else wants to come along, I'm more than happy. So whether I talk to one person, 5 people, 10 people, or 20,000 or more, the process in my brain or the framework in my brain is pretty much the same. So I'm not massively stressed.
Okay. I talked to another guy that he suffers from a lot of maladies, and It's dyslexia, ADHD, and OCD, and something else. And he can only. Sorry.
If he had one more, that'd be 5, and that's what I call a fist of disabilities.
Yeah. But the thing with him is he's always in the moment. Now, his problem is he has trouble because he's in the acting world after having been a comic for a long time. He has trouble memorizing stuff. But the thing is, he's 80 years old, and he never looks back. He doesn't get nostalgic and say, oh, this is great when I worked on Friends, or this is great when I worked on Breaking Bad. Now is what he's working on, and he's not thinking about anything else. And he said that all of his disabilities are a blessing and a curse at the same time, because it keeps him working and it keeps his mind going. So I think that everything that we have can sometimes be turned around to be something positive.
I agree. I think part of it is going, okay, what resources do I have that are easily available? It's about knowing yourself and going, how can I do the best that I can with whatever I got? And if you happen to be really good in living in the moment or living in the now, as Eckhart Tolle says, then great, go with it. To a certain extent, I have to do that too, which is why I love project-based and live events, because I'm locked in and I have hyper focus for the 3 hours or 4 hours of the show, and then nothing.
Yeah.
I'm totally forget. And then you go on social media and you stalk your own event and you look at the pictures. And, oh, wow, I remember that. Oh, that's me.
How did I do? Good. That's great. So let's talk about your influences. Yeah, let's talk about your influences. Who were your influences as far as comedy is concerned?
Oh, as far as comedy?
Yeah.
Okay, I was talking about alcohol as an influence. So
me too.
Oh, look. Yeah, comedy influences. Do you know what? I really love Rod Gilbert.
Okay.
And a lot of the British comedians and British humor. Like, I'm a huge fan of Monty Python. And if you go back and you look at Flying Circus, there's a lot of stuff in there that I just go, I'm not really so sure on now. However, there are some key bits, and the concept of the entire show and the concept of that one comedy troupe reinventing different things across decades is just amazing. And we look at their film work, like The Life of Brian and, Holy Grail and things like that. And even just the individual work of John Cleese.
Yeah.
And the rest of the Pythons. I just think that for me was such an eye-opening, informative moment for me, going, wow, these guys are amazing. And they're smart and articulate and quick. I also love Billy Connolly. I love the style that he's developed in long-form rambling storytelling, interlaced with fascinating and interesting, accurate anecdotes throughout. And I think I enjoy comedy that doesn't date as much. If we look at the work of Seinfeld, both as a series and Jerry Seinfeld as well, that style that he developed with his stand-up, I feel was dated and was stuck in an era of comedy. And I feel like that for some people, they're timeless, and other people, they're stuck in a decade there. And I'm very much drawn to the timeless stuff, which I think is a great way to future-proof oneself.
I'm glad you talked about Monty Python, because that was my big influence early on. And it was on the PBS channel here in South Bend. And I watched it religiously, and my dad and I bonded over that. And the Piranha Brothers was always my favorite skit. That was other ones, the Dead Parrot and stuff like that, are the ones that everybody talks about. But I loved Dinsdale. I loved the whole Piranha Brothers thing. And the funny thing is, it turned out to be something that my son and I bonded over, because one of the first movies I wanted him to watch was This Is Spinal Tap. And he watched it, and he was probably 12 or 13 at the time. And he said, Dad, I don't know what's in this. I hate it. And I'm like, oh no, we're going to be that kind of father and son. We're going to have nothing in common. And then I had him watch the Holy Grail with me, Monty Python and the Holy Grail, and he loved it. He loved it so much that he wanted the DVD and was just totally into Monty Python. So we really bonded on that. And Cleese, especially with Faulty Towers and all the stuff that he did after that, is just so prolific. He's a great guy.
Have you tried Spinal Tap again now he's older?
No, not. He's down in Alabama. He's a rocket scientist, and we don't see each other as much as we should, so we haven't revisited that.
Okay. I'm just saying that sometimes you'll watch something and it'll be the wrong time for you. It'll be too early. You don't understand enough about the world or have enough references to get a lot of the jokes. So when you re-listen to stuff, you can get new stuff out of it. And I would just hate for your son to miss out on Spinal Tap.
Yeah, I know. And I'll probably send him a note and say, hey, just watch this and tell me what you think. You probably don't remember, so just tell me what you think. And, it's neat to have a bonding moment like that with Monty Python.
Talking about Monty Python, I, too, bonded with my dad over Monty Python. I don't know if you can see that. Hang on, let's see. It's Always Look on the Bright Side of Life.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I really didn't think that through with my own webcam, but that's okay.
Yeah. That's great. And probably better than Every Sperm is Sacred.
Well, yeah, definitely elsewhere, but...
The little sperms on your arm, that's not going to do much.
Yeah, like my arm.
Yeah.
I just found that tattoo was a little hard to swallow, you know?
Yeah, no doubt. Nice pun. One of the things I like to ask everybody, because I'm a big reader and I'm a big podcast listener and just all that kind of stuff. Are you consuming any media, reading, watching, listening to music, anything that's really like getting the gears going and getting you inspired?
Do you know, look, there's on Amazon, I know it's a visual thing because we've all been in lockdown for a long time. In Melbourne, we had 6 months of lockdown.
Yeah.
And thankfully, it worked really well and we're able to venture outside into the sun again. There is a British comedy show on Amazon, and it is absolutely wonderful. I didn't actually think I'd like it as much as I do. And it's called something like the show where everything goes wrong.
Oh,
and it's masterfully written and designed slapstick show in front of a live audience that they produce. And it's from a comedy point of view, I don't think we as comedians explore some of the physical theater side of things. And to see such a concentration of slapstick comedy in one piece in conjunction with a lot of witty puns and a lot of great one-liners, I think that's been a panto style, but it's really great. So I've been consuming that, and that sort of gets me going and gets me thinking of things differently. And I think when you're a comic and constantly doing stand-up, it's sometimes really hard to try and get that edge or think of things differently or going, what am I going to talk about next? Because there's heaps of comics that talk about, I'm married now, or relationships or kids or whatever. To explore different things and to pull inspiration from that, I think can create a richness in routines.
Right. One of the things before we go off live here, I wanted to ask, have you been to the States very often?
Yes, there is. I remember my first show in the States. It was in Nashville on a little place on Broadway called The Second Fiddle. And I was invited over there as a guest of CMA because I was up for an award of some sort. So anyway, off the plane, and I thought I was staying in Vanderbilt at the Holiday Inn down there. Lovely place. Went for a wander around, got lost just before my show, turned up, a little bit sweaty and all over the place. Had what I was going to do in my head and thought, oh, yeah, fine. Turned up, turns out they were live streaming it to 3 different countries. And I went, oh, okay, cool. That would have been nice to know before. Jumped on the tour bus out the front to get changed and organize myself. I didn't even know there was going to be a tour bus. Did the show and bombed.
Oh,
terrible show. And everybody's got one of those stories. And I've just gone, no.
Yeah.
I thought I was being really funny, but totally different style of comedy for the Americans.
Yeah. And that's exactly where I was going with my question is the difference, because I've talked to quite a few British comics, and there's some pretty big differences because they're a lot more subtle. All the European comics are a lot more subtle, but American comics and British comics can translate to each other in a lot of cases, as long as you change up the words for a convenience store and cigarette and stuff like that. So as long as you change up the words, they're more interchangeable. But I've been watching some Australian TV, and it seems like you guys have different timing, different sensibility, and it's just a little bit different. Have you been able to put a pin on that to see what that's all about?
I think Australian and Canadian humor interchanges beautifully with British humor.
Okay.
So smooth transition, not a huge issue. I've done gigs in, both of those places, and not an issue. However, I find the style, and you know what, it just could be my outsider's view of American humor and American comedy. You guys got this roast flavor going through everything.
Yeah.
So it's got a bit of an edge, more of an edge to it, less subtlety.
Mm-hmm.
And it's more socially appropriate to roast you in jest in the States than it is in any other country.
Mm-hmm. I can see that.
It doesn't matter if you're a celebrity or just Joe on the street. That's a green light in the States. You can do that.
Mm.
Whereas if I randomly roasted someone in Australia, they'd go, he's a bit of a dick. Like, really? Are you doing that? However, if they heckling is consent.
Yeah.
So, all around the world, heckling's consent. If you want to yell out at a show, good luck. Good luck. You're on your own. No refunds.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's it. So I think my crude interpretation of comedy in the States, I feel like there's two sides to it. One is hyper polite and really great, and very clean. The other side is more of a darker roast, or you could probably compare it to coffee even. A darker roast where you can go to town and rip shreds off people and everyone's going to go, they're just words, it's fine, and I'll cry later.
I totally agree with that. There's extremes in the United States. It really is. It's either super clean, nothing is going to be said that's going to offend anybody, or it is, let's get into the weeds and call everybody cunts. It's amazing.
I love the word. In Australia, we use it as punctuation.
Yeah. I wish we could use it more here in the U.S. It's one of my favorite words. It's a verb. It's a noun. It's an adverb. You can do anything with it.
It's the evolution of fuck.
Yeah. No doubt. That's good. We've talked about Australian versus USA comedy, and I feel like I've given my viewers enough. They're going to have to tune into the podcast, which is Behind the Bits and easy to find on all the podcast apps if they want to hear the rest. We're going to go right now, and bye-bye. All right, that's over.
Okay, cool.
So one of the... I really don't like to go live, but it's one of the things that you have to do to get in people's minds. So it's my little earworm, but I can get rid of that guy too, because that bugs me too. I wanted to talk about everything you're into, because when I go to your website, your resume is huge. So what are the primary things that you are doing right now?
It sounds like I do a lot. I call it full utilization of asset. Basically, I say, to encompass everything, brain for hire.
Mm.
If you want me to use my magic Aspie brain power to make you laugh, great. Send me some money. If you want me to grow your business and double your income, great. Send me some money. Actually, basically, send me some money. That's pretty much it, really. But I need to do a lot of things to keep my brain active. I'm a little bit smarter than the average bear, and it's important for me to keep exercising and challenging this so that I can stay fresh in all the different areas. But essentially, there's two different parts. There's the entertainment side, which is me hosting stuff and doing comedy festival shows and emceeing and doing voiceovers and TV and stuff as a personality. If you look at a personality, they'll do a large gauntlet of things, as opposed to being an actor or a thespian of some sort, that will mainly focus on TV, film, or acting on the boards. The other side is actually using my brain and utilizing some of the skills that I've learned, not only in comedy, but also in my life, for growing businesses and solving problems, which I love. And that's the marketing strategy, the media distribution stuff, media buying, and doing a lot of that sort of stuff to engineer things for different businesses with different goals. And part of that is advertising. You take a really batshit boring business and you go, oh, great. How can I make people laugh and engage and remember that business? How can I solve their problems internally with people that are doing the same thing day in, day out, and make it vibrant and exciting for them? How can I inspire passion in someone's business? And that's very much the same as stand-up. How can I inspire laughter and passion and attention and interest with the audience that's sitting in front of me? So we use a variety of techniques to do that, as both as comics and as marketers and advertising people. And I think we talk about American comedy being about extremes. And for me, that's trying to use all of the different faculties of my brain together to make sure that I can get, really great outcomes for whoever and whatever I do.
So let's think about the reason why I'm going into this is because everybody wants to be the next Jerry Seinfeld. You mentioned Jerry, and everybody wants to be the next Richard Pryor, George Carlin, whatever. They want to Bill Burr. They want to be a big comic, but in reality, it's a very small percentage of people who actually get there. And if you want to talk realistically, you want to discover how you can make a living with your art and make a living with your brain. And instead of working in a factory or like me being a consultant and just not enjoying my job at all. So it's
funny you say not enjoying your job at all. That's actually I think there's a couple of key things that I find with comedians. Number one, they have to be doing something for most of their time they absolutely hate.
Yeah.
And they also have to be inherently broken somehow.
Yes. I've talked about that a lot. Yeah.
If you tick both of those boxes, hey, you are well on your way to success.
Yeah.
Or an early death, whatever.
Yeah. But the thing is people with a comedy brain also are usually, like yourself, a little bit more intelligent than the average bear.
Which is why we all struggle socially. Be pretty low out there.
Yeah. And they see things. They're able to look at things from the outside because they're always thinking of a bit, and just all that thing is going on in their brain. But what I want to tell the young comedians at large, that if you're good at comedy, you can translate that into something else. I've talked to people who have been screenwriters. They've gone into promotional type businesses. They've gone into a lot of things that are sometimes a little bit more behind the scenes, but you're still using that same brain and you're still working for yourself. And I think that's important for young people to understand.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think the biggest thing that I wish someone had told me earlier is there's all this external stuff when you want to be a stand-up or you want to be the next Jerry Seinfeld and you want to be the best. You don't have to be the best. There's plenty of people that are better than me.
Yeah.
Plenty of people that are worse. But it doesn't matter because there is only so much I can do. And all I need to do is get to know who I am, how I operate, and then link that to how can I make a sustainable living? And when we talk about sustainable living, it's not about getting high on coke and working as long as you can to do more gigs and grow. When I talk about wealth, I talk about financial wealth, and I also talk about like time freedom and having quality of life as well. And I think that's really important to encompass that in your wealth. Yeah, it's always good to strive to be better. I was lucky enough to spend a little bit of time ages ago with Edward de Bono, who pioneered the concept of lateral thinking. Mm-hmm. And he's got this great line called, and it's good, but not good enough. So how can we be good, but constantly looking for ways for us to tweak it and to be better? So when we look at our careers, and I think we should all have a career plan, and go, okay, I'm going to do X number of shows, and I feel like my goal is I can do 2 shows a week and still do my day job, or I can do 4 shows a week and this is my day job, and this is how I'm going to grow and bolt on to this. So I think as a non-celebrity comedian, it's a lot more work. You have to be a lot more creative, but you're in charge of your own ship. Mm. But you can control how many gigs you do. You can control where you do it. And even though it sounds like I do a lot, it's important to look at what you're actually good at and what you can deliver on. Mm. So if someone goes, oh, I need this, we're all very tempted to go, yeah, I reckon I could have a crack at that. Yeah. As opposed to going, that's not my core. This is not my core business. If a religious group said, can you come and open our conference for us? We'll pay you X amount of dollars and Hail Marys. I would be tempted to go, oh, the money, that's good. But I know that is 180% not a match.
Yeah.
And it would be fun for me. Yeah. But I don't think it would be a match. So there's other people that are really great at that. So that's where community comes in as well. And if we all look at what we're good at and what our core is through discovery and knowing who we are, then we're able to, number one, not compete, which I know you Americans love, not compete with each other as much, but understand the nuances between each of our styles. So I might go, hey, I got this really great gig. Hey, maybe you might want to try comedian XYZ. I know they're religious friendly, or they've got a great kids show that they do, and it's really funny. Or, oh, you're at that rough pub where people stab each other for a beer. Great, I've got a guy that will fit right in.
Yeah.
Or a middle-of-the-road medical conference. Oh, Ben, he's really good at that, and he can say big words.
Yeah, and building a network like that always comes back to you positively. And one of the things I've learned, and I don't want to get on a soapbox, but you should always continue giving even though you don't feel like you're getting as much back, because the continued giving is going to come back to you sooner or later. And it's not necessarily going to be from the people who you gave to. It's going to be somebody else. It's like the old adage, the harder you work, the luckier you get. And being able to give that guy the job at the nasty pub, that gives you cred, and you need the cred to keep networking and build new relationships. So I totally dig that. Yeah.
And you know what? I talk about networking a lot, but I actually think that I'm not particularly good at it. And largely with my comedy and my work, I've run my own race and done stuff pretty much on my own. And I've been really fortunate and lucky that I've been able to do that. Whereas everyone else, or a lot of other people, are doing open mic nights to start out and doing support acts and stuff like that. I bypassed all of that. I didn't do any of that. I was very fortunate that I had my own events company, and I've got all my own lighting, all my own audio. I've got a range of venues that I do. I've got my own comedy festival venue. Like, I'm super fortunate. And part of that is because I never felt really confident or good at networking. So I ended up just doing everything myself. Guaranteed way.
I find that interesting because one of the things I want to talk to you about is you are pretty much the product that you are selling. And for one of the first things I wanted to ask you is, you're in the voiceover work. Have you always been have you always talked as succinctly and voiceover-ish as you do now, or is that something you developed?
It happened after puberty.
Okay.
That's helpful.
Yeah.
And despite all the threats, no one has castrated me yet.
Yeah.
Although I reckon that'd be a great tobacco pouch, just saying. Anyway, I think I did a lot of voice work early on. So as in not speech therapist stuff, but as in I was a classically trained bass.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think that was a little bit helpful. And I think one of the things, particularly with voiceover, is tone.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like tone, and it could be wrong, this is just my anecdotal experience, I feel like tone is something you either have or you don't.
Mm-hmm.
And you can massage around the edge, and you can be better at it, and you can train your voice, and you can do a lot of work at it. But the core tone, I think, it's either there or it's not. But then also, having said that, I'm just very fortunate that my tone falls within the gauntlet of what we have a lot of voiceover work for. There's a heap of voiceover work for all sorts of different people for all sorts of different reasons. Mm-hmm. It's a terribly competitive industry all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there's a few different paths to getting into that. But again, a lot of people look at voiceover work as going, oh, I'll just do that as an add-on for some extra bucks. Totally not.
Yeah.
You've got to be 150% committed to it, more than your comedy, to do it and do it well.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if you land a big client and you go, no, I'm just talking to the mic, it's not hard, and there's 9 people in a studio, you've got from the agency, the client, and you're in the little toss box there with a window, and you can see them whispering and talking, and you might spend 2 hours on a 30-second ad.
Yeah.
And at the end of it, they'll go, this guy's shit.
Uh-huh.
And then the agency will go, okay, cool. Thanks for your time. Here's your money, and I'll never use you again.
Yeah.
And you've literally burnt those bridges.
Yeah.
So part of it is going, I either want to do this properly or not at all. And part of the problem with voiceovers, and I suppose it's in a similar sense part of the problem with comedy as well, is there's a lot of people that aren't passionate about it, that don't take it seriously. So we get 20% of the industry that's full of really switched on operators at all different levels, and 80% that's just background noise going, oh, I had a voiceover gig and I didn't really want to do it, so I stayed in bed. Or, I don't really have the skills and they said I was bad, so I don't like them anymore.
Yeah.
You know? As opposed to using it as an opportunity for growth or to be really switched on with it.
Right. So it's attitude and talent put together.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And absolutely skill. There's been times where I did especially when we look at voice acting. So a lot of times now I'll just get a script through and then I'll be doing 5. I'll read the script, and because I'm not with the other actors, I've got nothing to bounce off. So most of the things or a lot of the things that you hear where there's multiple voices, they've never met each other.
Yeah.
It's just a script that comes through and then you do that. And there's like animation and stuff like that. I'll do 5, 6, 7, 10 different versions of every single line with different inflections and different tones and different timings.
Yeah.
Just to really help the editors to get that right, because the last thing I want is anything coming back.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's death.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
It's funny. I'm experiencing a little bit of this simply because the podcast is starting to get some sponsors, and I'm doing self-read ads for these sponsors. And because
you're doing that as a personality.
Yeah, and I'm reading what I have written, and it's still hard. I have taken 100 takes on a 1-minute ad. And part of it's because I know I'm a perfectionist and I want it to come out. But part of it is I just totally fuck it up 99 out of 100 times.
And it's definitely a skill, just like reading auto cue. So when I do a lot of presenting stuff, I'm probably getting a little bit lazy these days. because I have such great auto cue skills, I just throw everything on auto cue now.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely a skill that I need and use regularly, but it's exactly the same. It's separating your eyes and your mouth and going, okay, I'm going to read 3 ahead, but still be mentally behind to try and manage it all. And then it's also the same thing if you're presenting, you've got auto cue happening, and you've also got your director or producer gas bagging in your ear about what's coming up next or problems or whatever. Yeah. and also that's part of why I love doing it. You know? And it's about working out where you want to be and focusing on that. So when we look at science, we look at like physics, Einstein wrote some stuff about it. Actually, Einstein wrote a lot of stuff, but it was talking about you've got X amount of energy. So the faster you move forward, meaning the momentum you've got forward, means you've got less capacity to move left and right. So if we look at if we relate that back to what we're talking about, how do we look at our careers? Do we spend $5,000 building a studio to do voiceover work that we don't really have the skills or passion for, but think we might be able to make some quick bucks? Or do we put $5,000 into doing that comedy class or doing that national tour or doing something that will enrich what we do or how we produce our content to be better at that core thing? It's okay to have different things. Like I do a lot of things, but I've consciously gone and developed skills in those areas, and I have training in those areas. And I've learned that's what works for me. And there's probably some people out there that will work for as well. But ultimately, make sure you have your focus, because we've got limited time and limited resources.
Yeah, no doubt. And speaking of promotion, one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is the way you promote yourself. So I stalked you on all the social medias and stuff like that, and you've got huge followings everywhere you're at. So Facebook, Instagram.
Apart from bloody TikTok. Like, seriously.
Yeah.
I don't have a cat.
Yeah.
You know, what am I going to do? I don't dance.
Yeah. Yeah, TikTok's a strange one. I've actually tried to do a character on there, and I finally gave up. I can't do it anymore. It's a conspiracy theorist dude. But yeah, it's not anything that I can maintain. But
from an Australian point of view, an American conspiracy theorist, wow, that's a doing it as a fake comedy skit is a great idea.
Yeah.
There's plenty of real ones.
Yeah, I've done it live plenty of times, and it's a lot of fun. But actually scripting it and going that way, I don't think I have the energy for it. But who knows, maybe. But talking about your following, you've obviously worked hard to get that following. And let's talk about how we met. So we're on this group that people get matched up with podcasts, and you reached out to me to do the podcast. And one of the things that comedians are really, they're either really good at promoting themselves and not so good at the comedy, or they're really good at the comedy and not so good at promoting themselves. And it's hard to find that happy medium. But when I looked at your webpage, you had been on, I don't know how many podcasts in the last year, just tons and tons of podcasts. And because you put yourself out there, and you also are you're pretty consistent with your social media and stuff like that. So what got you to the point of having all of the followers that you have now?
So there's a couple of tricks and a couple of things that I think we should talk about as well. Having a plan, working out who you are is what we talked about from a creative point of view. That also works for the back end as well, and the business side of it. I think it's really important to work out what your strengths are as far as what that is, and outsource. That's a really big thing as well. I have an aptitude for a range of different things. If you don't have that aptitude, which I totally understand, I outsource a whole heap of stuff that I'm not good at. There is no shame in going, hey, I'm not really good at PR, I'm going to go out and just pay someone who's really passionate about PR as I am about comedy.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Might cost you $20,000 a year or more to find the right person, but you'll get way better results out of that than having a crack and doing it yourself. And it's all about actions. How do I get the actions I require to get the results I want? And I've had this chat with some musicians that I work with. You can do your own PR and marketing, or you can do your own whatever, and you can learn the skills that you want to, if you want to. However, it's that cost benefit thing. Am I better off doing a couple of extra shifts at work to earn that $20,000 a year to pay the PR person? Or am I going to spend 3 years doing a PR degree or a commerce degree and then still have to do it myself? And if the PR works, I won't have time to do my own PR. I did breakfast radio for a couple of years, and I had in Australia, and I had a lot of radio segments. My connection with podcasters and radio people is pretty good. And I really love anecdotally just laughing and telling the stories and mucking around with people and doing stuff like that. So that works really well. But there's also there's nothing wrong with politely reaching out and going, hey, this is what I do. I really love your work. I've checked it out, and I'd love to get your opinion to see if I would be a fit for your show. And that's the big thing, is about respecting that it's not your show and you don't owe me anything at all. Yep. You're just trying to create the best content you can to grow your brand and your show. And it's not about me. It's not about you. It's about your show. It's about the product. And that's the biggest thing that I could probably share with anyone, is only pitch for things that you think you're going to be a really good fit for. This whole scattergun approach thing doesn't work. Now, look, I've been on a lot of podcasts and I love them. Absolutely love them. And I get to meet so many amazing presenters doing some really wonderful content. But I'm very careful with who I pitch to. Because I make sure it's going to be like a fit of some sort. Like on my website, there's two main categories. There's ones where I talk about the intellectual stuff and autism, and then ones that are just comedy. And two very different sections, but both appeal to the same audience. So when we're reaching out, it's not just podcasts, it's about media outlets. It's about other comedians as well to get on the bill for their stand-up show or variety show or whatever. It's about going, what do I think I will be a fit for? So how can I take some of the decision-making responsibility off you and help you out by making it an easy yes?
And that's exactly what you did with me. It was a very easy yes, and I probably wouldn't have found you if you hadn't reached out.
And so from sales and a business point of view, how we all do marketing and advertising and all sorts of work like that within our own businesses. And we go, oh, here's the number. Call the number if you want to buy something. How often does someone actually call? Never. Never. So why do we put so much hope and energy into that? People are going to call once they're engaged and once they're on board with your plan and once it's a value match or a mutual match of some sort. There's got to be a connection of some sort. So a lot of times as marketers and as business people and as entertainers, it's up to us to reach out to make that connection. And you get a lot of no's. You're absolutely going to get a lot of no's in the early days. Until you start refining and going, no, I know I'm a fit with this. I'm not a fit with that. That didn't go so well. This went well. And I think that's the important thing. Also, I know my target market. I've spent the last 4 years touring around Australia doing shows. And, I've also done, a couple in the States and some in the Ireland and some in Germany and all over. But essentially, Australia is my target market. They can get my humour. Thankfully, there's only 25 million of them, so it's a bit easier to market to them and a bit easier to pop around and say good day. Part of that is doing those face-to-face shows and getting out there. I've been very fortunate that I've been hosting some rather large events, And also, at the same time, I've also booked in a heap smaller events and all sorts of different stuff while I'm traveling. Mm-hmm. So that enables me to one-on-one see what they laugh at, see what they like, and also through the volume of people that I see, it enables me to weed out the ones that don't match or don't think I'm that funny or don't what I do. Mm-hmm. Find those that go, yeah, okay, I get it. Yep. Yeah, I like that. Yeah. And you're always going to have a problem growing if your audience is too small. If you're not in front of enough people. So if you only talk to 10 people a month, then you need 100% of those people to come on board to get some decent numbers.
Yeah.
And even then, you're still not going to do it. However, if you're talking to 10,000 people a month and 50 of them come on board, that's still pretty good.
Yeah.
And then you start honing your process and going, well, okay, I got 50 that time. Yeah. What do those 50 have in common? How can I expand that to 75 or 100 or 200? And then you start to build momentum and getting better at what you do. And part of getting better at what you do is simply by doing it.
Yes. And the funny thing is, I have somebody like you who messages me to be on the podcast, and I do a side project that's a wacky talk show that I do on Thursdays, and I use a Facebook group, a private Facebook group, to book people. And I have invited, I think, probably 140 people to that group. And it's a range of podcasters and comedians and just people who I think would be a good fit for the show. And I always every week I put a bulletin up and say, hey, I need 3 people for the show next Thursday. And I very rarely get 3 people to respond. And yet if I go to them individually and ask them, they'll say, yeah, I've been waiting for you to ask me. And I'm like,
Why?
You're here. You're here.
That's why you're in the group.
Yeah.
Oh, crazy. But that's just how some people are. And we work in comedy. So we know through our lived experience that a lot of comedians have a lot of issues, particularly the funny ones. And that's just what it is. So I've been aware of that and aware of what I'm doing to try and go, okay, how can I make it easier for you? And not everyone's going to do that. We can give this information to an industry and still people are going to go, yeah, I know that. Yeah, but you're not doing it. So, the best sort of, as a strategist, the best sort of strategy is the one you actually use.
Yes.
And I think that's the really tough thing with all of this, is to balance who we are as people and what we do, and then try to work out a way that we can sustainably get into it and do what we need to be successful. Yeah. And a lot of people are out here doing comedy self-sabotaging and quite happily not doing it and then whinging about it.
Yeah.
So maybe the first piece of advice, and this has been the best thing that I've ever done in my life, ever, to the point where it's actually continued my life a lot longer than I actually thought I'd be here for. Go get yourself a great therapist.
Yeah.
You said before, my entire life is me and my brand. That's my thing, says my wife falling over. That's literally my thing. So why would I not want to look after that? I've got a whole list of reasons, and that's why I see a therapist. But that's a really big thing. Yeah. Why are you self-sabotaging? And we are our own brand. I'm a huge advocate of not just functional mental health, but thriving mental health. And I'm not there yet, but I believe in the dream.
Yeah. And as long as you're working towards that, then you're always moving forward instead of stagnating.
Totally.
One of the best things I got for my studio was a whiteboard, and I use it for so many different things. I use it for working out bits, trying to put a solid hour together. And then I also do, what am I doing well for the podcast? What am I not doing so well, and things I need to work on. And it's really nice because with cell phones now, you can just take a picture of it and then you can pop it up whenever you want. So that's one of the tools that I got that I really enjoy and I use quite a bit.
It's funny, I've got a whiteboard too, because this is my studio here, and I use it mainly just for drawing dicks.
Yeah. You must be pretty good at it now, huh?
Hey, everyone's got a gift,
Yeah.
Don't shy away.
Oh, that's great. So there's a couple things I like to ask everybody. What would you say is the best and worst advice you ever got?
You need therapy, and you need therapy.
Okay.
Look, quite seriously, the best advice that I ever got was so important, and it works across all different industries, and it's a really great recipe for success. And every time I tell this, I tell it in the same way that it was told to me.
Uh-huh.
So this is a piece of golden advice. So if you're listening or watching, get out pen and paper. Make sure your pen works, because you're going to want to write this down. This is going to change your world. So get your line. Get a whole blank page, because you want to center this and frame it and put it on your wall forever. Okay, this is the key. This is the answer. It's not 42. This is the real answer. So this is the best piece of advice I ever got. Don't be shit. Don't be shit.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah. And we think about, I want to be the best. I want to be this. I want to be that. When really the bar is only as high as the previous highest person.
Yep.
So economics teaches us about the point of diminishing return. And we don't have to kill ourselves striving to be the world's best at anything. We just have to not be shit.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to deliver on what we're expected to do, and then polish that turd nicely.
Yeah.
So that it floats to the top.
I love that. When I when I first started doing open mics, my wife would come with me quite a bit, and the only question I'd ask her after the end of the night was, I the worst? And that, as long as I'm not the worst, I know I'm moving forward and I'm better than the last guy on the totem pole.
And also, that's very kind of you, because that's less of a lie for your wife. Was I funny? Was I the best?
Yeah.
Sure, honey. Yeah, that's right. Was I the worst? No, you weren't.
Yeah.
One guy sucked harder.
Yeah. That's an easy answer.
So, it's a very kind and compassionate thing that you've done there.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
One of the other things, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say the worst piece of advice I ever got was to buy Ansett shares.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. At the company that folded. But anyway.
That's never good advice.
No.
Yeah. My son actually bought some Bitcoin when it was like $7, and he sold it when it was, I think he was in college, and he was really proud of himself that he sold it when it was like 750. And now look at it.
Then it went up to 20,000.
Yeah.
Which is when I bought it. And then after that, it went all the way back down.
Yep. So the last thing I'd like to ask is, what 3 things do you know now that you wish you would have known when you started in the business?
Ego's dangerous. And I still battle with that, not only my own, but other people's. Understanding that I'm running my race, and it's easy to get caught up with keeping up with the Joneses or other people doing better than me. But I just need to be happy for them because they're doing well.
Yeah.
And also look after me and what I want, because we all want different things in this world, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And the third one most stresses and problems in life can actually be fixed with a fuck ton of money.
Yeah.
You know?
I believe that.
And a lot of struggles that some people have can easily be fixed with money.
Yeah.
So the lesson is, how can I try to find a way to ethically earn that money to make some of those problems go away?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, we even look at our governments that put fines on things, which fines doesn't mean something's illegal. It just means it's legal for a price.
Yeah.
So how do you fix that problem? Cash.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's important to, and I'm not saying fixate on money. I don't idolize money at all. And it's a nuanced thing. Mm-hmm. Money enables freedom, and I like freedom.
Yeah.
I'm not a bazillionaire by any stretch of the imagination, but it's more so having healthy attitudes towards money and understanding it's a tool. And I think that's the third piece of advice that I really wish I had have known earlier.
Yeah.
Is money and ego get caught together quite a lot. And our definition of success is a lot of times related to money, as in cash money, not what money buys or the freedom that money buys. And if you take ego out of money, I don't need the latest Ferrari. You know, I don't even need the latest car. You know, I would only buy something like that to show off to other people. I have a car that's fine. It works. I have a house that I like. I have stuff in it that I like. I don't need to have the biggest TV or the biggest house or to go on the most lavish holiday. I just do me. Yeah. And I only have to do things that I like.
Yeah.
And to understand and differentiate between what I like and what society thinks I should like, or what peer pressure thinks I should like, or what I'm showing off to, you know, make me look bigger or better. It's about differentiating that. And if you want to do it, cool, but make it a conscious choice, not an unconscious one.
Yeah. That's a fantastic perspective. And looking back at what you really want and what it takes to get there is all you need. You don't, all the other stuff is just, like you said, it's ego, it's keeping up with the Joneses, it's all the things that really end up tearing you down because you're not putting that thought and that time into something productive that can get to what you want.
Yep.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. That makes total sense. I got to say, Ben, this has been an excellent talk. I'm really glad you reached out, and I'm
pleased you said yes.
Yeah. I really hope that people take some of the things you said to heart, because really you're the captain of your own ship as far as comedy goes, or wherever you're going to take your comedy mind and put that. And you're really having a plan and putting all your effort into that plan is the way you're going to get to where you want to be. That was a good affirmation on something I already know, but everybody else needs to know too.
And there's nothing wrong with, so it takes a disproportionate amount of motivation and support to be successful in anything. So even though you and I both already know a chunk of what I've already said, what I said, it's really great to hear it in a different way.
Yeah.
With a different spin on it.
Yeah.
At a different time, at a different headspace.
Yeah.
Because as a group and as an industry, we need to look after and support each other as kindly as we can, because it is really hard out there.
Yeah.
And if artists can't look after artists, who can?
It's funny. This goes all the way back to when you talked about Spinal Tap, my son watching Spinal Tap. Sometimes you need to hear something at the right time. Other times it may just not click with you. And I'm rewatching Star Wars. I watched the first Star Wars and hated it in 1977. And so I never watched any more Star Wars. And then I decided, I've got a friend that is a podcaster and he's a big Star Wars fan. And I said, hey, what if I watch all the Star Wars and I report into you as a podcast and we talk about if I still hate Star Wars or not? And you give me shit if I don't, and you give me kudos if I like it. And so I'm doing that. And the funny thing is, it's not that bad. So I'm on one that's not so good right now, and I can't talk about it because it's all for the podcast. But yeah, the first 3 that were released, I'm okay with them. But yeah,
I still think they're the best 3. I'm just putting it out there.
Yeah. Well, based on the one I'm watching right now, yeah. Yeah, most def. Yeah.
I think it'd be funny if you did your Star Wars report on your mate's podcast in Klingon.
Yeah.
Totally give him an eye twitch.
Yeah. That's funny because I am a bit of a Trekkie, just the original stuff. I've never watched any of the others, but I do the original Star Trek in the movies. Yeah. Yeah,
Star Trek's something that I don't mind dipping in and out of.
Uh-huh.
And that's what I like about it. So it's on free-to-air TV here, and it's comforting, it's nice, and it's all over. I think I don't know if it's Amazon or Netflix or whatever it is out here, but it's got a heap of it on there, and it's just nice to dip in and out of.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful, friendly universe, and there's enough content there for you just to keep wandering around and being immersed in it.
Yeah. This is totally off topic, but are you like a fanboy of any Marvel universe or anything? Do you just totally get in and know every detail of something, or are you just casual?
I'm a cross between the two, only because the last 4 or 5 years, part of my touring around Australia has been with the Australian version of Comic-Cons.
Okay. Yeah, so you get to know them, yeah.
So there's a lot of times where I've just gone, I'm doing a one-on-one interview with someone from the Marvel universe that's in this film. So I better go watch the film again.
Yeah.
Or there was a couple of people from Harry Potter that came out. I quite like Harry Potter, but you'd go and rewatch them. So through rewatching a heap of stuff and being part of those communities, you pick up a lot of stuff. And,
yeah.
I find it really interesting, and I like the idea of not putting pressure on myself to know every detail about every film.
Yeah.
Because then it becomes a stress, and that's not why I watch films.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm totally the same way. There's only been 2 shows and 1 movie that I've just been bonkers over, and that's Twin Peaks and X-Files. Those 2 I've watched through multiple times. Yeah. And then the movie Cool Hand Luke, it's an old Paul Newman movie, and I watched that probably 12 times. Those are the only things I really get into, and it seems like comics in general are just really super fans of something, like Star Wars, Dungeons and Dragons, Marvel Universe, DC Universe. They tend to latch onto that, and meanwhile, I'm like, I watch some of them. I don't watch all of them. Yeah. And I enjoy the ones I watch, but if you start talking about Easter eggs and all the continuity and stuff like that, I don't know. I just want to be entertained for a couple hours.
That's why I like Lord of the Rings as well. I like the scenery and the screenshots. It looks pretty on the big screen. I like the music. I like the wizardy things are cool.
Yeah.
And do I know everything about them? No, not really. Have I read other Tolkien books? Well, I bought them, but I haven't read them yet.
Yeah.
And it's my escape, and we can all escape however we damn well want.
Yep. That's great. So, Ben, where can people find you if they want to see where you're at and what you're doing?
Everything is on bensorensen1.com, because some other bastard took Ben Sorensen. bensorensen1.com is the website, and like I said, Brain for Hire, really happy to collaborate and work with people and share the energy, because I think that's really great, particularly if we're in different countries. I think that's really awesome as well, because we can both learn so much. Social, everything is Ben Sorensen 1. Keep it nice and simple. So reach out, say hi, like my stuff, send me money.
Yeah.
Whatever.
I've really enjoyed what I've seen that you've put out, and I'm really glad you reached out, because it was a great talk. I think I learned some stuff.
Well, and I did too. I am just very blessed and fortunate that you created such a wonderful space to talk about comedy.
Yeah, thank you.
Specifically the back end of comedy, which there's not so many honest podcasts about that, or honest content about that. A lot of it is the front end. Go, hey, be funny, dance monkey. But It's actually really nice, and comparing notes as peers. I really love it. Thanks.
I appreciate that. I may use that as a soundbite. So just FYI, I get a lot of people. I get a lot of people who say they really enjoyed the podcast, and it's after I've stopped recording.
All the good stuff always happens afterwards.
So you got it while the button was still pushed, so I appreciate that. Thanks a lot, Ben. It's been great having you. And everybody check out bensorensen1.com, and that's all of his socials, too. He's got a lot of followers, and the reason why is because he puts out good content. So check it out, folks. Thanks for being on, Ben.
Absolute pleasure. Can't wait to do it again if you'll have me.
Oh, will do.